Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I am Raha.
I'm Alan.
And we have a very special guest today. Super excited to have this gentleman on with us, Mr. Bill Cooper.
Whoa, here we are. It's my pleasure. Oh my gosh, you guys, that's great.
Welcome, Bill.
This is officially the big time.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
Really?
Yes.
I'm thinking of it old time more than big time, but I'm good with that.
The good old
I'm good
times.
with that.
The best of times.
That's good.
So, Bill, we're going to jump in right away.
No problem.
What is a random, fun, interesting talent that you have?
I grew up on a farm, so I can do farm animals.
Oh.
Okay.
So maybe I'll pick like 3 of my favorites. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to start out with the pig.
Okay.
So that's the pig.
That is phenomenal.
And now I'm going to do like a bull. Well, not just a cow, but like a bull.
Okay.
Mrrr, mrrr. That's a bull.
This is wonderful.
And now I'll do a little lammy. Is that okay?
Okay. Perfect.
So that's literally, if they had a picture of me, they'd see my face red right now. My face is almost as red as yours. But anyway, I grew up on a farm.
It was so good, though. That was awesome. Yes.
I wish it was marketable, you know?
Yeah.
It's got to be. We're in Minnesota.
I can do a donkey. I can do that too. I just thought of that one.
That was very good.
That was pretty good.
That was very good.
Yeah.
I love that.
Anyway.
That's a good segue, I suppose. So you grew up on a farm.
Yeah, I did actually. You know, I grew up on a farm about 18 miles south of St. Cloud, a little town of Kimball. Has 535 people, intersection of Highway 55 and 15. And a lot of times I remember as a young person, especially when you kind of move to the city and you want to be an actor and all this stuff, you sort of hide that you're from a farm. And the reality is when I got into acting classes, when people found out I was from the farm, they thought that was really cool. And I think part of what was cool about it was I was really fortunate that my folks were both musical. They were... my grandparents were very musical. They played musical instruments. All my brothers and sisters were. My parents were really supportive. You know, some farm families, and I'm not throwing farm families under a bus or being generalities, but you work a lot on the farm. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't let people get involved in other things. And my parents were always like, hey, if you get your chores done and you get good grades, you can do whatever you want. You can be in plays, you can be in sports, you can join AV club, whatever you want. And so I feel very fortunate as a farm kid to just have very, very. I just come from a just intrinsically talented family, I guess. My parents danced a lot. We listened to classical music in our farmhouse. Wow. It's really interesting. And and I think in the big picture, I think growing up on the farm, you also learn a good work ethic, a sense of responsibility. You know, animals, it was a dairy farm, so I got up morning and night and milked cows and all of that. So in the reality is I'm just really kind of a hick when it comes to it. But I love gardening and all this stuff, and it really stems back from being on the farm. And so in my early 20s, I spent a lot of time, you know, trying to be this urban hip actor guy, you know. And my brain was always like, well, in spite of growing up on a farm. But it really changed. It was because of it. You can't change that anyway. So any of our listeners out there who grew up in a small town or grew up on a farm, anything's possible. You can't change where you come from. Embrace it and move on. That's the way I always feel. And I would say, though, I literally left the farm within a couple of days after graduating from high school. I had gotten a job. I was ready to go to college. I had no intention of staying on a farm. I didn't want to live in a small town. But I embrace it. I don't go back tons. My parents have both passed away and stuff. None of my brothers and sisters are farmers or anything. But whenever I have to drive to Sioux Falls or go to Des Moines and work or whatever, that drive, I kind of get back into look at the corn. It's knee-high by the 4th of July or whatever. I can tap into my little farm stuff pretty easy.
Aww.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exciting. So what made you decide to stay in Minnesota after that? Like once you moved out?
Yeah, well, both of my college degrees are from Minnesota. I have one at St. Cloud State University in communications and a drama degree from the University of Minnesota. Did I just say that twice? St. Cloud State, I have a communications, and then the University of Minnesota was drama.
Yep.
And just because my schooling was here, and I actually thought moving 60 or 80 miles away from where I grew up was far enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I pretty much... I spent some time as a newscaster in in southern Minnesota at KYC and things, and so I've always been around Minnesota. And I kind of caught on pretty early in the acting world here in town with hundreds of commercials and thousands of training videos over the years. And pretty soon you work into your way into films. It just always was a really great place to work. Now I've worked all over the country, but this has always been my home base.
Yeah.
So I still wanted to be sort of close home so I could go home and visit and do those things, but it's far enough for me. I don't know.
Absolutely. And we're still really central to everything.
Oh,
so
completely.
It's still, yeah.
I've been to LA a couple times this year. I'm going to Chicago this weekend. I go to New York every couple of years. I don't mind visiting those places, but I just like what living in the Midwest kind of keeps out the riffraff. Your property values aren't so crazy.
Yeah.
People tend to operate with good intentions. And I don't know. I just think you get a better slice of the total life pie. And I'm kind of a balanced guy. Mm-hmm. So that's and there's a lot of people over the years who have said, well, why didn't you ever move to LA? Or why didn't you ever, and I was like, you know what? I go out there and work. Doesn't mean I have to live there. I can still, especially more recent years where you can get on backstage and find parts and you just drive over to Chicago and do them and come home.
Mm-hmm.
Come back to I've downsized, but this property I've owned all these years, I'd never be able to afford in a bigger city. So.
Right.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I like Minnesotans. I like Midwestern people.
Yeah, that kind of plays into the whole, why do film in Minnesota? But I guess for you, has it been like a natural progression, or like how did you actually plug into film here?
Yeah. Here's what I would say, and I'll just do big picture, small picture, sort of the way I approach things.
Mm-hmm.
I always think of life as sort of an evolution of things. It's like if you say, you never really hit a point where like, oh, I'm done. That's the way I think. Or even in my early years when I graduated from college and I became a newscaster, and I did these couple things, and then I decided to quit my full-time job and just become an actor. And my parents were sort of like, well, why do you keep changing? Why do you keep changing? And I'm like, I'm not changing. I'm growing. I've just one thing builds on another. It's not like I started a certain business and then changed to a completely different business. Everything is always built one thing on the other. And so to me, my overall just like life philosophy tends to be do good things with good intentions, follow positive energy, try to live outside of the box as much as you can, take calculated risks. And so in a big picture, that's sort of how I never, as I sit at the festival office and I said, did you ever dream about being a managing director of a major film festival? It's like, no, it just happened because of just following through on energy and opportunities and being good at time management. And the same way with teaching. I've been teaching for 15 years. And an acting friend was teaching at the time and said, hey, would you sub for me and kind of help out with my class? And I did. And they were like, you should have your own classes. And by that time I had already been, asked out to coffee and beers so many times from people going like, how do you get in the business?
Yeah.
How do you do that? So I just started my own teaching. And in a more practical, smaller sense, I did all this commercial stuff, and you're on commercial sets with cinematographers and other actors, and they're all like, I'm working on this film, I'm working on that film. And then all of a sudden you start throwing your hat in the ring as an actor, and then you kind of catch that creative bug, because a lot of times those of us that act in town regularly, we do a lot of corporate things and commercial things. I just modeled winter gloves for a coupon.
Oh,
there
you go.
Yeah.
Hey, it was 4 hours. I only worked about a half hour. It paid $185 an hour. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
Wow.
But doing those kind of things then allows you to work on films for less money or whatever. And so that's how it sort of just evolved over time. I hit a certain age and I was like, I think I can make a film. And then you make one, and it gets into a couple festivals, and you kind of make it like, I was putting myself in my own first film, and it just evolves over time, and the more you do, the more you learn, I guess, and you just follow positive energy and the things I talked about.
Yeah, and like starting from what you kind of touched on with
Yep.
like other people that come to you saying like, what do I do to get in the industry? When you left, I guess, college maybe or something, what did you do?
Yeah. Literally, my first jobs out of college were as a newscaster. I looked like a newscaster. I could, Abdul Basit Ali Al Magrahi. I could pronounce things properly.
Yeah.
I learned to write. When you go to these, newscasters are journalists. They're not.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue that many of them are more. Oh man, I'm going to get in so much trouble. My concern about, and I like news, but my concern about news is celebrity news. If it's a celebrity, it makes it the news, even if it doesn't affect people and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But pretty much while I was a newscaster for 4 or 5 years, and I ended up working for Hubbard a little bit here in town as well. I kept thinking, I'm acting like a newscaster. I really want to just be an actor. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I actually started producing some little things because I learned how to edit. When you go to journalism school and become a journalist, you go to a small TV station, they're like, you come back from a shoot and you got, at the time, video to edit, literally video, not digital media, it's video.
VHS?
Not quite, but I was at a beta time. I was at a beta time, 3/4 inch. Oh yeah, 3/4 inch beta, some 1 inch stuff. I learned how to tell stories very quickly. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, wasn't that kind of a deterrent, a waste of time?" And I was like, "No. I learned how to tell stories very quickly." And that's what acting is, and that's what filmmaking is. It's telling stories. So I can look at an interview and just go, pick this, just because you get used to really making quick storytelling decisions. And I would also say just my first job, when I got daily assignments, they were really fun. I was a reporter and a newscaster, a weekend news guy. When they would give me, hey, you can have a couple of weeks to work on X story, those were the best. It wasn't spot news. It wasn't like, oh, go out to this fire or go out to this school board meeting or go out to a clown at the library. Sorry, it was just like
here we are.
Investigative reporting, advanced investigative reporting, and you're like interviewing a clown at the library or giving out dog biscuits at the drive-in bank window.
Right.
If you have a dog in your car, I did a story on that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because that was the assignment.
Yeah.
The point being is that's where it went, and then you just keep moving forward. Keep that patchwork quilt of time, energy, and money enough to settle it in. The only other thing I just would say in a general sense, and whether it's filmmaking or acting, I think I have a modicum of talent. Naturally innate talent. But I think part of a person's success in the arts is balancing art and business or craft and business. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, great dancer, but they can't quite, or they paint really beautiful pictures, but if they can't get their ass to the Edina Art Fair or into a museum or whatever, you got to learn to economize your talent or economize your art. And a lot of times creative types, and I'm not throwing you all under the bus, but aren't good at that. It's just like a filmmaker that says, here's my little film, and they have no plan on how that film is going to see the world.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to. It depends on why you do it. So I think everybody should just, and as I think of myself, I just think I've really tried, and I try to instill in even my acting students, this is how you network. This is how you've got, it's a business. If you want to do it for fun, great. Some days it's like, I wish it was all fun. Or when I used to just hope and pray there was a check in the mailbox from my agent so I could pay the rent. Many years ago, you kind of, those days are gone, but somewhat gone. You always have to look at your accounts receivable and accounts payable and all this stuff. But you just have to balance that stuff out.
Absolutely. Marketing yourself, networking. Something that I think a lot of people in this, at least actors that like I know and even myself struggle with. So the idea, I think it's brilliant to even bring it up, like that's a huge part of it. And if you can't learn to do that, you're going to struggle.
If you're trying to make acting a business, you got to treat it like a business. If you're making filmmaking as a business, or production or media or whatever it is you're working on, if you don't think of it as a business, I mean, there are business. There's business sort of rules. It's easier to keep clients or keep customers than get new customers. Mm-hmm. It takes seven points of connection before you make a sale. Don't quit acting after 7 auditions. You got to give this time. So all those things. If you just think of it, put a business hat on, and it's like any business though. You have to have good pizza if you want to sell pizza. Mm-hmm. But if nobody's buying it, you got to figure out how to get them to buy it. Give out samples, give out a coupon. Right. And if the business or the talent world or the art world isn't making it happen for you, you got to make it yourself. Mm-hmm. You got to make it yourself or do it yourself. I don't know.
Absolutely.
I love absolutely too.
So you've had your hat in like so many different aspects of filmmaking and everything, whether it's acting, producing, directing, writing, editing, the film festivals. What is kind of your biggest passion, at least right now? Like, where do you find the most joy?
Oh, that's a good question. Here's what I would say. I really love teaching. I really love teaching. And I think all of us, and I'm not a parent, I don't have my own children and stuff, so I think parents naturally become teachers because they teach their kids how to tie their shoes and right and wrong, and the stove is hot. Yeah. And I think humans in general, most humans become teachers. Mm-hmm. And it's just a matter of like, what are you going to teach? And so for me, as I help Josh Ungaretti with his film, or I see Mike Borka made a film, and he's an acting student of mine from 15 years ago. You're sort of like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. So for me, and maybe it's just, I just love my studio, and hell can be breaking loose. But when I walk in my studio where I control every inch of it for the next 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours, whenever I'm teaching, I can just be there. And the other thing I would just say that I have found so interesting, because I know other teachers and stuff, here's what I notice when I'm teaching. First of all, anybody that sits in my chairs, and I only teach small, like 8 people at max. You've been there.
Yeah.
I can kind of be doing my thing, and I look up, and every one of those people is like glued to whatever it is happening. What I'm saying, or when we're playing back scenes on the thing, everybody is just mesmerized by watching. I just have this great opportunity of teaching, not high school biology where half the people are asleep and a quarter of the people are doing other things, and maybe there's 5 people in the whole class that are paying attention. I just have a wonderful, not a captive audience, but they're just so anxious to learn and do things. And so I just combine all these years of experience with my training and help people along. So I think that's very, when it really comes down to it now, because I've done a lot of acting, and I'm not, I'll do more. I'm out here. I'm getting old, but you got any jobs for me? I'll consider them. I think if it really push comes to shove, it would be lovely to act 5 days a week.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's just not the reality of life. It's not the reality of life, and especially as you get older, there are less parts. And so teaching has turned into just a wonderful, wonderful. It feeds me as much as I think it feeds other people. That being said, as the festival got started, it really was an extension of teaching in some respects, because I am working with a lot of 30-year-olds, 25-year-olds, and as it moves forward, a lot of my work is helping other people move forward. So I don't know, man, that's my word. And again, and partly with a festival kind of thing, when you take a tiny festival, started working on it 12 years ago with a 4-day event and 30 films, to now a year-round organization with an office and distributors there and galas and celebrities. And it just gets so much more involved. It doesn't get easier. And in some respects, some of the best satisfaction is just having it all happen. Yeah. And nobody get hurt. No loss of life or limb. And you kind of take this almost crazy first world problem or
Right.
situation, and make it all happen. There's a lot of satisfaction with that as well. Knock on wood. I'm earlier this week I went to a seminar for Medicare because I need to sign up for Medicare next year. Which is 65 years old, by the way.
You didn't even have to say that.
Because do people know that?
I didn't, to be totally honest.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm just dumb.
You
I don't
have
know.
to sign up for Medicare at 65.
I didn't
But
know
I
that.
went to this Medicare workshop, and I was just reminded again people are like, are you retired? When are you going to retire? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm sort of like, man, I really feel like I retired in 1990 maybe, when I no longer had a full-time job. Everything since then has been acting, film, teaching related. I just have had that good fortune of however it happened. So
Okay then. 1990. What happened? Did you turn pro then? Is that when you're...
Here's what I would say. I was producing television shows for Continental Cable over in St. Paul, and I started there in 1985 as a producer, senior producer. They started this department, and there was eventually 8 people working there. And I knew I was giving into my 401k, and I knew that would mature at 5 years. And I had already had some agents at that time, and I said to myself, if I can stand 5 years at this place, and I'll give you some numbers. If I can work 5 years at that place and put away 6% of my income or 3% of my income, and they would match it, 6% of my income or whatever it was, I could get a check for $18,000. I knew that if I landed that, I would still be making money, but I would get a check for $18,000. And if back in 1990, I could live on that for a year.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So I said, I'm done. I'm going to give this a year. I'm going to give acting a year. And just like, can I piecemeal? But that time I had an agent for probably 4 or 5 months and had already gotten a number of gigs. And I was just like, I can make this much money in a day as opposed to the time. And so it literally was when I quit my job, took a month off, went to San Diego, and came back and just hit it hard and negotiated with my agents. And that was kind of it. I haven't applied for another job since. I negotiated with Jaden at the festival about working, but I also worked at the festival for 6 years without getting paid 1 cent.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's what you do when you love something and you want to make it happen and
Absolutely,
be part of the community. So,
What do you think, Rahana? Can you stick with the podcast for 6 years?
6 years. Although if anybody wants to advertise, that'd be great. But yes, 100%.
yeah,
That's exciting.
I think
That's
you have to.
amazing.
Yeah.
I really have to. I remember the day I was ready to give it quit, and I was having second thoughts. You know what? I just went in and I was literally going to quit. And one of my colleagues at work, very smart guy, he said, "Let's go out for breakfast." And went out for breakfast. He said, "What are you afraid of?" I said, "Well, what if I don't make it? What if it doesn't work out?" He said, "Well, what's the worst that can happen? You know, you've got these years of experience. You know, you've got a good resume. Are you afraid of your own ability?" And I was like, no, and walked back into the place and quit. It was, look, you know, it's like marriage or any of that stuff. If it's a big move, you're going to have maybe second that unknowing. Yeah. I think all self-employed people sort of feel like that. If you go self-employed, it's like you hope you can put together enough gigs or jobs, or people are buying enough wedding cakes that you make offline or whatever it is. I think you worry about that, and then it's sort of, you set up goals, and it's like, oh, okay, I met that goal. I didn't have to tap into my money. Then I ended up buying my second house with some of the leftover. So it worked out. It just worked out. Yeah. I don't know. It worked out.
Right.
Really like believing in yourself and betting on you and your work ethic and what you can do.
I think it goes right back. You know, when I walk into an audition, and I see the same people over and over again that I audition with all the time. I mean, they are some of my best friends. I look around the room and I go, any one of us people can do this job. Mm-hmm. This isn't a matter of, are you qualified for this job or not? We're all qualified. Mm-hmm. We're all trained. We're all responsible. We're all good. And so that being said, for me too, it's not only what you look like and your skill, it is like that constant be there on time, saying yes to your agents, going that, I always talk to my students about it's pretty quiet on the extra mile. It's pretty lonely on the extra mile. People, I don't know what it is in the big picture. And if young people are listening, I want to encourage you to really don't, some young people nowadays, and again, there's my age and then there's another group of older, younger people, and then there's younger people and younger people. We all look at the next generations below us. But showing up for work on time 5 days in a row is not an accomplishment. Mm-mm. That's not an accomplishment. That is like the bare minimum. And the people I know that are successful, much like yourselves, it isn't because you do the bare minimum. Sometimes I get a little grief if I stay late at work, or somebody maybe doesn't have a lot of money, and I say, that's all right, let me just edit that for you. I'll get her done for you. And my spouses are like, why do you do all these extra things? I said, well, it's not that many extra things. I said, but I can do it. I can help them out. It's not that big of a deal in the big picture. I could volunteer at the food shelf, which is important to get volunteers, or I can volunteer at a festival if you want. But if I volunteer a half hour or an hour to help somebody out, my motto has always been just like, go the extra mile. Just go the extra mile. If it's due on Friday, get it done on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. That was my motto forever. It's just the way I work. I don't know.
I would fully agree with that. I think that's really important
and
for everyone to hear.
And people that say, and sometimes if a student comes to class and says, sorry, sorry I don't have this memorized very well. And I was like, well, don't say you're sorry to me. Don't say you're sorry to me. Talk to your scene partner. You didn't take the time to memorize this. Mm-hmm. Well, I work pretty good under pressure. And I was like, that, we all have pressure in our life and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is that working under pressure is a result of poor time management overall. Yep. Not that we don't get last minute things. Not that there are deadlines with edits or color correction or deadlines to get stuff into a festival. Mm-hmm. Our deadline is Monday, by the way, our extended late deadline. And I know stuff happens, but to me, I don't like that feeling.
No.
I don't like that feeling. I got here 20 minutes early and sat in the parking lot and did some emails because I didn't know what the traffic was and I didn't want to be late for you guys. So I don't know where that came from, but I just think it's lonely on the extra mile, and just showing up just doesn't work anymore. If you want to get ahead, you have to just really go the extra mile.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that speaks to a lot of like Minnesotans that I know out in California or LA, because they do have a strong work ethic, and it shows up out there, and like you said, it stands out.
Well, they love to hire Midwesterners.
Yeah.
Because people are like, their word is good. I go out there pretty regularly, and oftentimes I'll send out like a month ahead of time. I'll say, hey, I'm heading out to LA. Who wants to get together? I used to like make a lot of appointments, and now I literally go, I'm here for brunch and I'm here for happy hour.
There you go.
If you want to see me, here's where I'll be. Invariably, if I send it out to 60 people, say, like 2 will email back or get back in touch with me. And you're kind of like, oh, I guess nobody wants to get together.
Yeah.
You send out a reminder like 4 days before you leave, and 55 people will get back to you and say, text me when you're in town. Yeah, we'll get together. It's just a different... And I do know that there's an optimum of like when you should contact people or for stuff, and I tend to be way ahead of time. And if it's too far, people like, oh, I don't have to worry about that because it's not due for a while. So you want to find that operative time to contact people or arrange something. And so I've gotten some advice, worth advice from some of my colleagues, like, Bill, you maybe don't want to start recruiting 6 weeks ahead of time. Just find out closer to the event or the time. Oh yeah, but I hate all this last minute stuff. For most people, it's not last minute, but I have found out LA people are like completely last minute. And I don't know if it's because they're waiting for something else that might happen or they don't want to commit. Mm-hmm. And I think that happens all over, but it just, especially out there, it just seems kind of weird.
For me, I feel like the last minute thing, or like you were saying, even learning your lines the last minute and having that crunch time, I feel like that's where like stress and anxiety really thrives. And don't we all already have so much of that in our lives? Like everyone I know talks about how much they have, like stress and anxiety. Why make that worse on yourself?
I would.
Why would you do that?
And from a real practical standpoint, and this is an actor, it's about what you say, what you do, how you feel. And if you're struggling with the lines, it's going to be harder to remember your directions, and it's especially going to be hard for you to get a real deep emotional connection to any material if you're they come from different parts of the brain. And so again, I just tend to, if I have several weeks to learn something, or I even talk to my actors, if you have 20, do I need to memorize this? You have a week. You have a week. If you're working and your agent sends you something for an audition tomorrow, memorize it. Just take the time to memorize it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope you, as you work on films and everything too, you've noticed that people in Minnesota tend to be really good though, overall, about showing up on time and learning their stuff and huge commitments and stuff.
Yeah. There's it's interesting being on, behind the camera, both probably. So it's just kind of like there are people who can really memorize stuff really good.
Yes.
And there's others, we'll see. But
I just think of it as like a basic skill that just really helps, because it just helps your performance if you just focus.
I know it comes with the territory. It's indie film. Where what I'm dealing with, it's no budget based, so it's kind of like, it's a grain of salt move. You have to roll with the punches. So
I always also think that whether I'm getting paid a lot of money or a little money, my sphere of influence is important to me, and so again, whether you're, I personally, and I try and instill this with other people I work with, is like, we have 100 or so volunteers every year at the festival, and if they don't do their work, I am going to fire them.
Yeah.
Because we try to give them the tools, we tell them what to do, and if they're going to blow off volunteer because it's like, well, it's just volunteer, it says something about them. And so I do hear on one level, you don't have a financial leverage over someone.
Right.
But at the same time, again, if they continually say yes and show up unprepared, it doesn't matter whether you're paying them or not, you're not.
Oh, yeah. There's always a mental check note of like who's actually following through.
Oh, completely.
Absolutely.
On everything, or confirming things, or this is too small of a community. And LA is a small community, or any of these cities, there's a community, and you have a sphere of influence. And which is very sacred. I always think of it as sacred. And again, drug dealers have a sphere of influence. Ministers have a sphere of influence. I mean, it's different kinds of influence, but you want to be careful with that. If you have an influence, or you can influence people, you hopefully do it for a good way. That the business is repeat business, and so if I know for a fact, I have gotten roles from producers or directors, not because I could do the work and I fit the part, but they just knew I was reliable. And I'm sorry if that sounds really old-fashioned and all that kind of stuff, but come on.
I know it's getting to be, unfortunately, but it's like it should be the standard.
Your standard should be, if you say you're going to show up at a certain time. Filmmaking is tough, though, isn't it, Alan?
Well, and you would think, if you're in this community, if you're in this field, you have to have some form of passion for it. Like, there's a reason that you decided, I don't want to, sit at a desk 5 days a week and just have this as my salary and be done and have weekends. You're going, on auditions, and you're putting in the work, and you have the headshot, and you're trying to make a resume, and you're trying to show up to networking events. Like, if you are doing all of that anyway, and then you show up and you don't have your lines memorized, and you're not showing up on time, then clearly you don't have that passion. So why are you then wasting everyone's time?
Well, and on the flip side too, I get very irritated at filmmakers who promise people a copy of the film. I'm doing this for free. Or an actor is doing, I work with a lot of up-and-coming actors, and I'm like, get involved in student films. Volunteer your time at the 48 and the 50-50, and just get out there. That'll really help you. Maybe you can get some copies for your, if that's part of the bargain. And especially nowadays when you literally have to send a link to someone. You don't even have to burn DVDs. Remember when, when I was first in the business, my first reels were on VHS. I would take a VHS tape to a commercial shoot and I would hand it to not one of the main people, but like a second or third area person, like, hey, how can I get a copy of this? And you'd hand them a VHS so they get the material and they would dub it over and then they would get it for you. I'm just saying nowadays it's just so easy. And I do know there's proprietary things. I do know that filmmakers, you don't necessarily want it out in the middle of the world, or you're trying to save your premiere for a festival, or I know there's all sorts of other things. But if you promise an actor or an audio person or a makeup artist a copy of the film, get them a copy of the film. If you don't, you're not paying your bills. And it's like people will quit working with you. If you don't, you know, that when I work with some young, I've over the years have just done little classes at MCTC and a number of places. And when I'm talking with these filmmakers, I'm just like, you know, it starts with the audition notice and then auditioning. And, you know, if you want high caliber actors, you can't have a crappy audition. Have it organized. Have it on time. Look them in the face. Be friendly. Because some of us, you're deciding on me and I'm deciding on you. If it comes across sketchy at all, unorganized at all, I want nothing to do with it. I don't need the money. I don't need the experience. And I want to, you know, there's caveats to that as well. I mean, not, you know, there's some, there's caveats, but I just know that I don't like it when actors get maybe taken advantage of, especially nowadays when it's really easy to send a link.
Right. I would say I think I have less than copies of half of the things that I've done. And it makes me really sad because I would love to make a reel, but I'm like,
well, and I also want to be clear to actors too, in that, you know, as if you offer, you know, if you entice actors, like, we don't have a big budget, you can use this stuff for your reel. And I recently worked on a feature where we had a lot of background talent that we couldn't pay, and I was like, I will give every one of you an IMDb credit. You will be credited individually, not uncredited. If you're a gambler or if you're a party goer or whatever it is, I will give you an IMDb credit. But I want to make sure that they get what they deserve. Period. I just think that's otherwise you're not paying your bills. It's like you're not paying your bills.
Yeah. And speaking of films, tell us about your film. It's called Beta Fish, right?
Beta Fish. Yeah. You know, and it goes back a little bit to education and stuff too. And Josh Ungaretti was an acting student of mine. Is an acting student. Well, actually, colleague more now. And he was. He's a big film guy. He knows every Academy Award winning film, and he knows who directs everything and who writes them. He's just got this crazy brain of, he kind of tries to test me all the time. And I'm like, don't ask me that. I don't remember who won best. Well, I am on one hand, but again, you can't say, who won best picture in 1971?
Oh, geez.
You know, I'm just kind of like, well, One Flew Over. No, maybe not. I don't know.
What was it last year?
It was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and it was nominated with 5. So he's got this savant sort of thing going on. So he's a great film guy, but he literally had auditioned for a number of films locally and hadn't got cast, and he was irritated about it. And I said, instead of whining, I said, because he also has a degree in production, and if he's listening, he's heard me say this before. It's like, shake your own tree. Do something yourself then. Just if you don't like what's going on or it isn't happening for you, you can't just sit on your couch and whine. Do something. And he had made some short films in college. He went to Augsburg. And he wrote this film. He had about 40 pages. He said, would you read it? And I said, I won't read it till you get at least 80 pages. And he's like, what? And I was just like, no. I said, that's not really, that's a funny length and blah, blah, blah. And I read it and I was like, you got a lot of dialogue. I don't know what else is happening. Who is this person? So I said, go back to your script writing things and really look how to put it together. And we met and sat on my deck and we read it. And I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good. I like this. I like this. I like this. And he said, well, let's have a reading. Can we do a reading? And so I helped him put together a reading. Our festival actually supported his reading, which kicked off a fundraiser. And he ended up getting some funds. And then he kind of looked at me and said, hey, you're going to direct this, aren't you? And I was like, whoa. because I have my own stuff. I bought a script a couple of years ago with Half Apple Films, and I got my own sort of stuff going on. And I said, well, first, I don't think you can afford me. And he said, well, what would it take? And I said, well, maybe this much. And sure enough, he literally handed me a cashier's check and was like, and I was just like, I guess I have to do this. But again, even at the premiere with the cast and crew, we were, I was just looked out and I just saw so many people I know, so many, I mean, notable. I can list Gabby DeMoro and Matt Mintz and all these really great actors in town who, for nothing, were in my background. I was just like, you didn't have to do this. You're already like making, why are you doing? So anyway, I called in a lot of favors. He is so lucky he had me involved. I don't know if that ever would have been made. I was sort of like the old guy whipping a whip on the set to get, how it is to get things done. It's like herding cats. But we ended up shooting this feature in 11 days.
Wow.
The guy who shot it, Judd Nichols, had agreed to edit it after it was sort of done, and I just sort of helped supervise the edit. He and I and Josh kind of did the edit together, and we just had the premiere of it, and we really are pretty deep in some negotiations as we speak with a distributor that's interested. So that's really exciting. It's really exciting. It's a really unusual thriller, film noir, thriller con kind of thing. Uh-huh. And it's kind of a dark comedy. We made it fun. And once we got into the editing suite, we made it more funny than we had really planned, but it's okay.
So 11 days in production.
That's
Is
incredible.
that in a row?
We had one day off.
Oh.
Myself and Brianna Rose Lee, who you guys know, was my assistant director, and we both had another commitment, and we were like, we're just taking a day off. And I would also add, if you took total days too, because they went back and got some B-roll stuff and that kind of thing for another day, maybe day and a half, a car shot and stuff. So there's a little bit more, but the basic, and it's an 86 minutes or 84 minutes or something like that with credits.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a little crazy. It's a very character driven thing though. There weren't big car. Well, there was a car, a convertible.
There
with
was
some
a
car
car.
scenes. But that's filmmaking. The car, we had it for 5 hours. The car showed up and said, "You have me for 2 hours."
Jeez.
And instead of wigging out, you kind of go, "Okay, what's our priority?" And you get her done.
Yeah.
So it's been good, and I'm just really pleased how it worked out, and it's great. And selfishly, part of the reason I also did it is because I really have the plan is something much bigger in the pretty near future, and to me it was just like, okay, get back in the saddle, crack that whip, shake the tree with everybody and kind of get that going, and so that when I do have more money and more time, I can rally the troops a little faster. So but you know how it is. It's a little like when I talk to men in particular about filmmaking, I always talk about it's kind of like giving birth. Like you have to live with the idea of it, how it's going to go, and all of that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of pain.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pain, and again, it's first world pain,
Right.
It's not like we're jumping in a boat escaping tyranny.
Yes.
But it's just it rains, you lose a location, somebody gets sick. It's a very difficult process, and then you get 3 creative people watching the same edit, and you're yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
Very passionate.
It's yelling and screaming, sort of yelling and screaming. I don't let it get too out of hand.
I just saw an article or read an article earlier this morning that Cynthia had actually posted about how there's 3 versions of every movie: the version that you write, the version that you film, and then the version that you edit. And that's exactly what that made me think of.
You're completely right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
and it's
no
fascinating
question about
because it's right. Yeah.
Well, and ideally, the more you work on it, it should get better at every stage. And even if you want to add, there's the writing stage, and then there's the casting stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the production stage, and then even after you have it edited or have the rough cut done or the picture lock done, when you hand it off to your audio man or woman that
Yes.
sweetens that, and then you add the composer, and then you get the opening and closing graphic. It just gets better and better. I always think of it as a cake. It's like you make that really good cake, get her all together, and then add the frosting is sort of the editing, and the sprinkles are all the last minute stuff you add. I want a dog barking in the background or something, and it all comes together, and in the end it should just be better. I was listening to an article about Tarantino's film coming out right now, and how he's getting close to retirement. He only wanted to do 10 films. This is his 9th and stuff. And somebody had commented that he's sort of, the one thing they liked about him is like he always has a vision. It's always his. He's a control freak about every facet of it. And I think that's maybe true to some point, but I never think of directing something as being a control freak. I just think of it as create an environment surround yourself with good people, create an environment let them do what they do best. You do have to have the quarterback, or you have to have the conductor of the orchestra. And there are times where you have to say, nope, this is it. We're moving on. But it's collaborative and it's team. And if you don't approach it that way, there's going to be a lot more headbutting than you really. And ideally, you can disagree respectfully.
Right.
And a lot of creative stuff isn't right and wrong anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not right and wrong.
It's just different versions of something that could be good.
Yeah. I kind of like that take, or I like that scene, or why don't we? It's like, it's all relative. I don't know.
Yeah, we had Megan on almost a year ago.
I know, so weird.
And she was probably in the middle of shooting it.
It was just after, actually.
Yeah.
And she was talking about her role a little bit. And it was very fascinating.
She killed it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Again, it's one of those things and again, she played a really awful character. But Megan was an example too of, again, she's a makeup artist by trade, who wanted to get into acting. She took a couple of acting classes, and this opportunity came up, and I thought she'd be really great for the part. But at the same time, when one of our locations fell through, she was like, "Oh, I know these people at a diner. We shot some of the scenes in the same at the Schmitz Artist Lofts over in St. Paul, and they have this great community room that we made into a jazz club.
Yeah,
and but we ran into her apartment to get her glasses." Like her glass to put in the background and make it more like a bar. And, everybody, you just pitch in.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody just pitches in. And so you could be the star of the movie, and in a low budget movie, you're still sort of, hey, can you pick up Domino's on the way?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You and I were like, we shared an actor in Ava, because she was in yours and mine at that time, and we were simultaneously in production at that time.
I didn't know that. Oh, wow.
Because we spilled into June because we were only going to do May.
Yep.
But it was over weekends. It wasn't in a row. So it was
sure.
Constantly guerrilla film style. So it was just like...
Well, and when you get really good caliber actors, you try... But again, I think... locations are the hardest thing of all.
Oh, yes.
I just like locations, and then scheduling, like actors' schedules.
Yeah.
It becomes just like, oh my God, how do you?
It's
but
so
you just
hard.
do it as a puzzle, and for us, we simply we prioritize. We were like, for our locations, it was like lock into the most important locations first. When, because we use the St. Paul Athletic Club, when will they let us shoot? And they were like, a Monday and a Tuesday. That's it. It's like, okay, this Monday and this Tuesday are these scenes, and these are the people we need.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a lot of fudge, because we would have recast potentially. I think everybody had bought into it at that time. We were so far down the road that everybody would have made it work, but we let people know way ahead of time, like, you need to be here for this and this. It gets a little.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like herding cats.
So switching gears a little bit.
Okay.
Before we run out of time, the Twin Cities Film Fest.
Yes.
It's on its way. You are doing so much work getting ready for this. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, the Twin Cities Film Fest is a year-round organization, which most people know. We just really help to build a community. We have screenings regularly. We have educational stuff and the Actor Expo and all that kind of stuff. But our sort of crown jewel is our 11-day festival, mainstream festival in the fall, which is typically late October. We kind of end right around Halloween every year. This year it's the 16th to the 26th of October. All the screenings happen at the Icon Theater. We continually just raise the bar every year with the number of submissions. The first couple of years we would begged for studios to give us one of their films, and now they sort of call us, or we have regular meetings, or they'll say, hey, we'll show it to you ahead of time. It'll be at the, and Jane and I and maybe one other person will walk in and watch this film because the studio wants us to see it and consider it for the festival. So, we've had, knock on wood, we've just had really great luck. And again, our festival, I would have to say our sort of, a third of all of our festival has Minnesota connected films in it. And that's important to us because we feel film exhibition and showing and supporting the Minnesota film community is crucial. It's what we want to do. Right. In fact, sometimes they're like, do you only show Minnesota films? But people even forget, though, that Green Book, which won the Academy Award for Best Film, was produced by a Minnesota person.
Right.
Yeah.
Jim Burke, who's actually being recognized at our gala in September.
Wow.
It's great to have, which is just coming out now. We're getting the graphics. We're sending out. In fact, I think our members just got a notification of that, but we're recognizing them at our gala. So that's really good. And we always think of these kind of movies as sort of like get people into the theater so that they turn around and then go to a short block or go to maybe a Minnesota film that has less notable people in it and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just kind of grown in a very good, calculated way. Mm-hmm. We try to treat filmmakers well. We have parties every night. It's just a mammoth undertaking when you just have all of these films coming in and getting them on the screen. And
you guys go all out for those 11 days. I've seen you guys just. I get tired looking at you guys. It's like, whoa, slow down.
Well, it's definitely a marathon. There's no doubt about it. And the thing that people like Jane and I chuckle about, some of the main people that work on it too, is it gets to 8, 9, 10 days into the festival, and people are like, "Aren't you glad this is over in a couple of days?" And you're sort of like, for us, it's not. I mean, the actual event isn't over with it, but there's bills to pay. There's 130 films to return to filmmakers. Yeah. There's just like tons of stuff. And I always think of, by the time the festival comes, my brain as the managing director is really on reconnecting. I always think, if I can have 5 or 6 really great conversations in the course of the thing, I'll be really good. But my brain's already thinking ahead. Mm-hmm. And so, and I also work to, quite frankly, If I do my job right, I can evaporate the first day of the festival, and the festival goes on. It's how I try to work things. It isn't because I'm lazy. It's because we have just had, and it's so remarkable for us that when we look around at our staff meetings, which start up in August, when you have your Lee Jordans and your Dallas Smiths and your Josh Dahlman, and all these people have come back and back and back for peanuts and help us out every single year. It's really just feeds your soul. Like, they buy into helping the community and getting involved in something that's fun and sexy, and we're trying. We're trying. I will evaporate officially one of these days, but I'm not sure what that's going to be.
Because last year we talked to Matt, who was at the time.
Yeah, and Matt, who's just such a great guy. He just did wonders for our education. And I listened actually to that podcast. Yeah. He did wonders for our education. He's the kind of guy that he works so good on, like, this is what we're thinking, and this is the overview. Now run with it and let us know if you need anything. And so Jaden came back from somewhere and said, I think we should have a Film Fellows program. He was out at another festival, and they have this Film Fellows program. And he looked at me and was like, can we do that? And I was like, sure. And then I looked at Matt and I said, can you coordinate a Film Fellows program? And so he just takes it and it goes. Or he started the career fair, or he's helped with Best Buy, the free day and stuff. Some of those things with his exit, and we're so pleased to have Nick Swedland, our new education director, is taking the ball and running with some of the things he did. But there's also changes come with a new person. You're like, oh, this is our priority and stuff. So, we always knock on wood, and it's like, when is this going to get easier? And it doesn't really matter, because some of things get easier, but whether you have a lot of money or a little money, the challenges just change. The bigger stars you get in, the more BS you have to No, I should say. There's just more hoops to get them there and get them where they need to be and deal with publicists and blah, blah, blah. And so the bigger you get, it just comes with a bit different set of problems or challenges. And then you just take a deep breath and figure out what the priority is and move forward. And again, do things with good intentions. We feel like we have a big influence and we're not going to mess with that as much as we can. I know as next week when we invite a fair amount of films to be in our festival, there's going to be a lot of films that aren't selected, and that is disappointing to a lot of people, or it's irritating to a lot of people. So we know it's much like an actor not getting a part. Mm-hmm. It just it's part of the ball game. It's just part of the process, and I'm willing to take the heat. You have to be.
You can only fit so much into 11 days.
You can only fit so much, and it gets harder and harder to fill in. And I hope the Icon hangs with us. They're a beautiful theater.
Oh, absolutely.
The people are wonderful, and they've grown with us. But they also are under, mandates from studios and whatnot to play certain films. So we go in and say, hey, can we get a third screen, or can we get a third screen for these 5 days? They're like, we'll give you a third screen for 2 days. Because we're at a point where we'd love to have 3 screens for 11 days.
Right.
And it just isn't, it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's a labor of love, and we're all glad to do it.
Yeah. It's an amazing event that everyone should attend.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, it's an experience.
Yes.
And just to network even.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll meet a lot of people. I met you there, Bill.
Oh, completely.
The first time.
Well, and I remember, I think we did a little iPhone video with you as well as a filmmaker. Well, and it goes back to kind of like, I always say, thrust yourself in the vortex of the activities or the group or the type of things you'd like to be doing. And so, again, Industry Night is free. You can go there, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people that are in the industry.
Yeah.
I talk to my actors. It's like, volunteer. If you don't have money, it doesn't even matter. Volunteer for 4 hours and you get a free ticket. Okay? Mm-hmm. Not necessarily to open and closing, but you get a free ticket. Go to a short block, and 7 or 8 short filmmakers are going to be standing up there that have made these shorts that you can go up to them afterwards and say, I liked your short, or why did you choose to shoot it up north? Or whatever it is, you can just be around all of these people that are making films. And if it just doesn't take that much, from my perspective, wherewithal to just be where the action is. And if people say, oh, it's who you know and luck, it's like, okay, create your luck. Get your ass to film events, acting events, network, support other filmmakers, and
take your shot.
Use your relationships that you know. Everybody uses relationships in every part of life. If you're a wait staff somewhere, and they get an opening and you're a good waiter, the manager will come to you and say, do you know anybody that might want to get a job here? And if you recommend, it is the way the world works. And so create your luck and use your relationships in a mutually beneficial way. That's an excuse. Show up.
Yeah, if it's who you know, then show up there and meet the people, so that way you know
completely.
The people.
And if you go,
then you can
and if you go, I'll spend a minute talking to you and a minute talking to you, and then I am going to go find people that I don't know. When I have groups of filmmakers or group of actors, they come to a little industry night and they all huddle around each other like a little swarm of spawning fish, and I'm like, wait a minute, you guys all know each other. This is a networking event.
Yeah, they're little cliques that tend to form.
And it's like that fear.
Yeah, it's like,
comfort zone.
How do I do it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, networking 101. First of all, if you go to a networking event, it isn't to necessarily continually talk to the same people you see regularly. It's to meet new people. Yeah. Even if you meet with your group of friends and say, let's all meet back here in 30 minutes and talk who we met. I always say to put 10 business cards in your... do you have business cards? No. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. You've got to have business cards. And I know that might seem old-fashioned and like, oh, we all have our phones and we can touch our phones and we'll exchange stuff. Business cards. Put your picture on your business card. Take 10 business cards and exchange them. Don't say, here's my business card. Say, I'd love to exchange business cards, because you get home and you have 10 business cards you've given away and you don't have any in return. You're like, I gave out 10 business cards to, I don't actually remember who they were. I have no way of getting, so there's, or if you go to a networking event, go to the person that's standing by themselves.
Ooh, yes.
They don't want to be at a networking event standing by themselves. They will talk to you about anything.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and I'm not saying you're going there to just like, who can get me a job, who can blah, blah, blah.
Oh.
It's just go. And the other thing, when I work with actors, did you even ask for all of this advice? Sorry.
No, this is amazing
Networking
advice.
No,
101.
Yeah.
but part of it is it's like, okay, my first degree is in communication, so you learn a lot about communications to masses and all that stuff, but also interpersonal. If two people have a conversation, at the end of the conversation, regardless of what is said, the person who has talked the longest typically feels better about the interaction.
Yeah.
So what that tells you, and again, when actors say, well, I don't like to just walk up to somebody and like recite my resume or talk about myself. That's like the last thing you should do. Walk up to somebody and ask them a lot of questions. Get them to talk. People don't connect because of your resume. They connect because you both have dogs. They connect because you both went to the same naughty Greek restaurant on University Avenue. You know, they don't connect because of your business necessarily. They connect because of you as a person. So get other people, ask questions, get other people to talk. Man, I have talked the most in this podcast, though. I apologize. I should have let you guys talk.
This isn't about us. This is about you.
This has got your name on
I
it.
was just realizing, like, shut
They
up.
hear
But
us
Bill,
talk long enough.
We are out of time.
We are.
However, one last question I have.
Of course.
It's of course the
want
hardest
another
one.
animal?
It's the hardest one.
Oh, okay.
What's your why? Why do you do this?
Oh my gosh. I always have loved, I'm not a very big, well, oh my gosh. Bill usually knows what to, here's where my brain goes first. So I think you should always like go to your brain first. It absolutely feeds my soul. I never feel like I ever work. I never feel like I work. As I get closer to retirement, people are like, won't it be great to get done with your work? I was like, I'm not going to quit doing what I'm doing. So it just has fed my soul forever and ever. And I can think back in high school, the moment I got this lightning went through my body as an actor. And I went, I cannot go back. I am addicted. I'm addicted to that feeling of it. And so, for me, I like the drug. Mm-hmm. At the last day of the festival, and I look at the recap video, and I see like, who are all these people having so much fun? Or a student of mine calls from LA saying, I had this great audition. I cried on the spot, and it's because of you. I don't know. I like to help people, and it feeds my soul.
That's great.
Absolutely. That is the reason to do this.
Yeah. Well,
People.
Yes.
thank you, Bill, for being with us today.
Thank you so much. This was awesome having you.
Oh, it's been fun, you guys. It's always fun to talk to
Yes.
colleagues.
We will definitely have to have you on again soon because this is awesome. This is the best.
When you go to a 4-hour podcast now.
Well, that's Film in Minnesota.
Yep. We will.
I'm Alan Tracy.
I'm Rahana Power, and we'll talk to you guys later.